fire alarm, please follow the directions of City Hall and RFJ staff. Please leave the building immediately by the nearest route following the emergency exit signs, and please do not use the elevators. All persons should proceed to the assembly point at the east side of the building at the Titanic Memorial Garden. Please don't leave the site until all guests have been accounted for, and please don't attempt to re-enter until directed to by City Hall security staff. There are evacuation chairs available for visitors with limited mobility. The RFJ staff can bring guests to the outside area of the Great Hall, and the security staff will then take them. If I could ask that we all turn off our mobile phones or place them on silent for the duration of the event. And please also kindly note the children must be supervised and accompanied at all times by City Hall, and that includes using the facilities outside the event spaces. So many thanks for your attention, and we'll start in just a couple of minutes. Thank you. J.D. McCargan, I want to begin by saying what a privilege it is to welcome you all here tonight for the launch of Local Line. The Remember Quilt is the largest and most inclusive memorial of those killed during our recent conflict Since its inception in 2001, families from all backgrounds, affected by all actors of the conflict, have come together to create squares in memory of their loved ones. Each square is a testimony of memory and love, a unique expression of loss, inclusion, and human rights. Over 2 decades ago, this powerful initiative began and has grown into a remarkable legacy, one that continues tonight with Quilt 11. This new panel adds to that legacy, standing as a continuing act of remembrance for those it honours. Each square in Quilt 11 has been lovingly created, capturing not only the deep loss felt by families, but also the richness of the lives remembered. Although the Remembering Quilt is displayed publicly, the intimacy and the stories behind each square remain with the families who designed them, and they remain with me. I've had the privilege of working alongside many of you throughout this process. It has been an honour to witness your prayer and hear you speak of your loved ones. Your memories, your love, and your dedication are stitched into this beautiful quilt, transforming it from fabric into something far, far more meaningful, a living memorial. So tonight, we're not just unveiling a quilt, we're recognising the power of memory, the strength of community, and the enduring love of families. We remember our loved ones every day, but anniversaries can be especially hard. I want to take a moment to acknowledge those whose loved ones' anniversaries fall this month, and in particular to mark the 50th anniversaries of Marie Bennett, which has just passed, Jerry McLennan's next week, and Charles Irvine's in July. Their lives, like those of all the individuals remembered in this quilt, remain with us in the most meaningful of ways. I would now like to invite Ellen McMahon to speak, who dedicated a square on this quilt to her son Jared.
Good evening, everyone. As Mary Kate said, my name is Ellen McMahon, and I done a quilt on behalf of my son Jared, who was murdered in 2016. Mary Kate's words, I can't say really anything more than what she has said, for the love and the stitches, right or wrong, ripped out and put back in again, that's been put into this quilt by a lot of people that I have been with over the months of year after year doing the squares. I've had people give their advice, and I've shut it off, and I've learned to learn a lot about myself. But a snooker table hasn't got brown stuff on it, it's got green stuff on it. And I accepted that. So I learned quite a lot about myself. I couldn't see the quilt tonight for looking for it. And Mary Kate pointed it out. And you know that warm feeling you get when something you love just touches you? And that's what I felt tonight. My son said, Mom, here you are. I'm sure you saw that same feeling tonight, and I hope you still get that nice feeling that I got tonight looking at your loved one's squares. Relatives for Justice has been there for us all through the years. I lost 2 brothers in the Troubles, 54 years and 34 years. And that feeling never leaves. You know, and their squares are on the hill here tonight as well as my son's. And although it's heartbreaking as what it is, it keeps their memory alive. It keeps the fight for justice for some of us all to keep fighting. I gained my strength, I have to say, from the Balmurphy people to fight for justice for my son. And I just feel the energy in here tonight from everybody. It's lovely. It's lovely being here. I just want to say thanks to Relatives for Justice for showing us how it can be done, And I know that we all learn by the wrong stitch and the right stitch. And that's how we get through things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I would now like to invite Jude White to speak, who dedicated the score to his mother, Maggie.
That's what I love about Belfast for Justice. They invite you down for a cup of tea, and the next thing you're standing on the podium. It's amazing. I was just thinking there when I was looking at the new quilt. My mother was born. We used to bum and blow about this everywhere to the closest house to the City Hall in Belfast. It was 42 Little Main Street, just there at the corner of Rob Street. We used to tell her sister and brother who lived in Canada that as if that was, we weren't from the markets because we were cut from a real fine cloth. My mum, we were from central Belfast. And I can remember, it was just as I came in here tonight, I thought, this is the first time. 68 next month. This is the first time I've ever been in this hall. And this says something about this town, about this world, that people of our age, of people who are in their mid-60s, early 60s, 70s, lived through. We truly were, and were is the past tense, on ancient couches area. We were second-class citizens in our own city, and we aren't anymore. And the fact that I'm allowed in here tonight is living proof that we're not second-class citizens. When I was introduced to, this quilt, we're all big. Sorry, we're not all big. We're all very small. We macho men from the market. Like, we don't do sewing. Girls do that. I know nobody complains to me. Or women do that. And I found actually being down with 5 or 6 other people and Jane, our instructor, one of the most therapeutic things I've ever done. Not only did I live through or reflect on my mother and my father and what life actually was in the 60s, am I allowed to say this? The crack was really, really brilliant. Maybe to get into that, we've got to have been in hell yourself, but it was a great therapy. I also got away from my wife for the day and my children, which added immensely to my personal happiness. My mother and father, I would be telling you a lie if I said they were Republicans. I would be telling you a lie if I said they were nationalists. We were living up in University Street. My mother couldn't understand in the 60s or the early 70s what in heaven's name was wrong with all these people in the Bogside and on the Falls Road. She used to say that every child she had, she 10 of them, she got another £6.50 family allowance. And that probably explains why she seemed to be pregnant from 1955 to 1975 constantly. We were, with a small U, unionists. I personally wasn't, but I can assure you the most radical thing that ever happened, in our house was that my mum and dad joined the Alliance Party or something like that. And when you look at these quilts, and I have also looked at quilts from the other side of the community, the union side of the community, they are overwhelmingly military in nature, and these here are overwhelmingly civilian in nature. And that's effectively the two narratives that we're trying to reconcile. The vast bulk of Catholics who were killed in this conflict were unarmed civilians, and I never get tired of saying that. Unarmed civilians who were connected to virtually nothing except their family. In the case of my mother, I can't tell you how wonderful a family life we had. We lived on the Old Road. The 60s were a great time. Down won the All Ireland in 60 and 61. Celtic won the European Cup in 67, Manchester United in 68. I could not have asked for a more idyllic, wonderful childhood. The bottom of the street was the cricket club, and the top of the street was Queen's University, the botanical gardens, and the Humble Park. Everything seemed to change on the Ormer Road anyway, not quite 1969. And I could see in the parents a fear that I'd never seen before. And the overwhelming reason for that fear was the presence of the UDR on the Ormer Road. And I often felt that if you lived without these gangsters stopping you every day, your life could be a wee bit more tolerable. I do understand the role of the British Army and the repression that they were involved in. But in many respects, it wasn't personal. These were people that I grew up with, were now stopping you in the street because they had a uniform and a seriously bad attitude. Her life was summed up, like many people of that era, in a few things. One of the central features was St. Malachy's Catholic Church, and we were there without choice from you were not until you left the house. And then when you went back for your dinner on Sunday, you had to pretend you were there, and she would ask you who was the priest, and you were usually called out. The other sector of her life was smoking fags. And I've got a wee packet of 20 pence in the edges here, but that's all I remember my mum and dad doing. Going to church and smoking cigarettes. They loved Ballycastle, and her life changed completely and radically and dramatically when she got a job as a taxi driver. This was all quite illegal at that time down in Crummock Street with a woman called Sally Winters. And I can remember her having money and having a car, more than anything. I can remember it being free from my dad, that she could go out on her own and get away from her kids, which is, I suppose, a bit unfair maybe to say, but you know, when I look at her and when I look at women of that era, they did, in my view, live a life of extreme hardness. And when she got that taxi, her life changed, but that brought her into conflict with mainly the UDR and the RUC. And the rest, I suppose, is history. If somebody came to me and said, "Yeah, your mother was a Republican or a top IRA woman," sorry, I'd be very proud, but it's not true. My mother was a civilian, a God-fearing civilian, who would have done anything for her family, would have done anything for the Catholic Church, and I suspect that reflects women and men of that era. After she was murdered, there was 2 bomb attacks on our house. The first bomb, the young fellow blew himself up. His name was David Maitland, and I had she told me to go and put a pillow on his head, which I did, and I make no apologies for that. I'm a human being, this was another human being. But if I had to change one thing in my life, I would never have done it, because there just are some things in this world you shouldn't see, and that's one of the things I shouldn't have seen. He died about 12 years ago. He had lost an arm, he lost a leg, and half of his face was blown off. And because of that act of kindness, I thought that the UVF wouldn't come back near us. You know, I thought he'd go back and say, "Listen, don't be bombing those people." One of them saved my life, but they did come back in April 1984 and put a bomb at the front of the house. They killed, that's another thing about death. Families get divided. Is it killed? Is it murdered? Or did she die? Even in my own family, we can't even the narrative sometimes. And a young guy, 21-year-old, called Michael Dawson. He was a policeman who was coming up the. And that, I think, like many of you folk out there, changes everything. 41 years later, last year with Alba Relatives for Justice, 40 years, over 600 people turned up on the Ormer Road. But we must stand together and stand firm. We haven't time for hatred. We haven't time for revenge. We have time for one thing and one thing only, and that is the truth. And we will not stop ever trying to get that truth. And if Sean Brown's wife from Balahi stand with our family through thick and thin, through degradation and through humiliation. We can stand with her. So thanks very much for allowing me to address this.
I would now like to welcome to the podium our CEO of Belfast for Justice, Mark Thompson.
Fáilte rúh gach duine an tháinig ceathair Belfast an up in Crimea special. You're all very welcome tonight at City Hall for this very special event. Before we begin, I want to read the names of the people on the panel. I want to reflect on each name, each family, and each person here. Take a moment to remember. Tony McCarthy, Phil Gary, Gavin McShane, Sean McPartlin, Joseph Kelly, Tony Fisher, John White, Andrew Kearney, Kieran McElroy, Pat Crossan, Mark Rogers, Tony McDowell, Neil McCrory, Patrick Pierce McCrory, Frank Crawford, Francie Brennan, Terry Enright, Seamus Rooney, Gabriel Williams, Michael Turner, Samuel Rush, Jojo O'Connor, Gerard McMahon, Jerry McClanahan, Thomas McElroy, Jimmy Gilman, Michael McCartan, Robert McCulloch, Charlie Irvine, Ta Parr, Jim Parr, Marie Bennett, Edward McDonald, Pat Benstead, Peggy White, Frankie Toner, Eugene Martin, John Donaghy, Jerry Keatings, Sean McDonald, Jimmy Quigley, Frank Hamilton, John Toner, Tony T.C. Campbell, Ambrose Hardy, Jimmy McCann, Jimmy Sloan, Robert Burns, and Seamus Morris. 49 families came together, worked together, shared laughter, tears, pain, heartache, tea, coffee, comfort, love, empathy, and support. And that's what this quilt is about. Jude made mention of City Hall and the change. This quilt first started in 1999 with an idea and a concept. The backdrop was the peace process and the exclusion of particular experiences of the conflict. Where the meta-conflict, that is, where the war ended, physical military war ended, the battle for narrative, and the battle of who did who to whom, and who was morally right, and legally right, and justified, began to play itself out. In this very building, a plaque was erected to innocent victims of terrorism. And by definition, that excludes so many people. There was a window in the city to the RUC, the City Hall, a window to the UDR, and a window to the British Army. And there was memory, and that's right, and everyone should remember. But there was no place, and Relatives for Justice had to fight with the families we support to find their place. And we thought about memorialisation and how important it was in the cut and thrust of conflict ends and everything that was happening in the transformation of our society. And we thought about how memorialisation is in statue and granite and windows and all of these other things, which is grand and which is fine. But normally it overlooks the participation of ordinary people. It commemorates, but it's institutions doing this, and governments and others. And we thought about a project that was to tackle exclusion, to tackle hierarchy started traveling in the United States at a time when I went through the ocean hunt in the 1980s. I took a day and I went to see some of the museums, but what I came across was a protest on the Lincoln Memorial. And laying out in the green was the International AIDS Club. And I remember being struck coming from one of the Smithsonian Institutes to go to another, and I stopped to speak. And there was a woman, and she told me her story. And she said, my son died of AIDS, he lived in San Francisco. This is his partner. We're here with the International AIDS Club because we're lobbying Congress and the Reagan administration to resource and finance a cure for AIDS. And on the other side of the road, I saw a religious sect of people, mostly young men around my own age, who were demonstrating and vilifying that mother, the dead man's partner, and other people because of their sexuality, their choice, their lifestyle. And they were doing, and I thought each of them instinctively of back home and what was going on in our city in the 1980s. And when we tried to come up with something that was about being therapeutic, participative involvement, textile, art, process, coming together, I reflected back, and we were trying to always clear ideas and talk about the book. I talked about the international books, but automatically, Clara Riley, Sean Baker, Andre Murphy, people who were in our organisation says that's a brilliant idea, we're going to have it. And they came up with the process. And you have Clara Riley, Maura Hunter, Reach Kane, Marie Murphy, Sean Baker, and the lady Alicia McInnes, and Reach Kane has passed sadly as well in more recent years. And they worked, and the process began. And the first launch that we had was I think 2001 at the Fed. But what I was saying, what I want is, it's about people. And it's essentially about you. I read out 49 words, and there's 11 panels. And it equates to 539 individuals. And in the course of doing this project down the years, and it's run 27 years, in the course of doing it, we have had squares that have went to people who worked in aid projects in Africa, so as they could finish their bit, to North America, to Australia, to New Zealand, to Britain, to all over the island of Ireland and beyond, where people have completed it. And when they hand over their squares too, there's an emotion in that, and there's an attachment to what they did. Because the memory memorialization is tough and it's difficult. You're dealing with some of the most fundamentally difficult experiences that you can encounter. The trauma, the transgenerational trauma, and everything that comes with it. But the quilt is about essentially love. And I often say, in the early days when it started, and there were many, many mothers came, and they made squares, and they handed them. And for me, what encapsulated the quilt was that those mothers and families that brought their children into this world and onto this earth, that reared them and nurtured them, that loved them and cuddled them and cradled them and embraced them. The same mothers and families that carried those people when they were killed to their final places of rest. And think about that. Think about what you have created in this power and increasing world. It is a testament of how we do mobilization. It is best practice. And that the process and the outcome of what we see and what we have is as every much important as that journey because it opens pathways to healing and recovery and reconciliation. I mentioned all of those names, and there are 6 brothers that are on that quilt. Ella's family and others, Harsh and others. And there are other relatives. And the multiple traumas that are in families in the city and beyond, multiple traumas. And that the help and support that we provide for our staff and our teams and our programs, the journey with you and partner with you is such a privilege and a humbling experience that we can have an intervention in a small way in people's lives and do a positive thing and a good thing. And we are here 27 years later. And we are in this space and we are remembering and we are not forgotten. And I want to talk about journeys of reconciliation because there's a There's a former Republican prisoner who was on long cash when the camp was burned. And a British soldier who was a guard in that camp took his diary and kept it. And many, many years later in the peace process, as it was developed and the Good Friday Agreement was signed, a unionist politician met a Republican politician. They said to him, I know a British soldier has a diary belonging to someone that's supposed to be from West Belfast, and they want to get it to him all these years later. And so the family, through an intermediary, met and received the diary. And part of it's in that story. And he says, I kept it all that time because it's important to you. And in that diary, that family found out things that were noted down in those early 1970s that they didn't know about in terms of even their own family and connections and so forth. I think that's just one more story. And if you'll indulge me for a little bit, I'm from Twinbrook. My mom was back in Twinbrook when I go across the border doing this work with her. I'm very proud of Twinbrook. Wonderful place to grow up. And I grew up with Andrew Kearney. Andrew Kearney, we moved out of Juniper Court, and their family moved out in 1973-74. And we were in another part of town. My brother Peter was killed, he's on the Quilt, was killed many years ago. Then Andrew was killed. And, you know, there are not a lot of people in Twinbrook compared to other areas that had those experiences. And we grew up together, sure. But one of the funny stories is, when my brother was 11, he got £10 for his birthday and he went to the audience. And he took a pair of 8 full series of moustache and a nose and a pair of glasses. And of course, he rolled around, and Andrew put them on and on into the house, and he kept them. And Peter couldn't get them back. And when he went home to get her, he said to my mother, and we knew the Kearneys particularly well. My mother went around and says, good morning, we're on because our Peter's using his notes and he wants them back. And I was reminded of that when I was looking at that earlier. And the world that we live in, and the pain and the suffering that families go through. But there's love and laughter too. There's healing and reconciliation, and there's moving forward. And we need to do that. And Jude's so fundamentally right. It's about truth. And last week, as you know, our organisation has many strings to its bow. Some of our board and staff, we met to honest you in Dublin about legacy and about dealing with the past. Because the terrible Legacy Act and the imposition of the Independent Commission, so-called, for information recovery and reconciliation and information recovery, has been foisted and enforced upon families. And in court cases, we won every court case for families to stop what is essentially a lockdown of truth, justice, and the rule of law and rights. The Good Friday Agreement gave families agency. It gave us the Human Rights Act. And it gives us the tools by which you as families can seek truth and justice. Because the circle isn't completed until we have truth, justice, and accountability for what happened. And the British government are trying to close that down in many regards, because they don't want that narrative out there. For reputational issues and damage, the truth be emergent. They just don't want it. And we're fighting them, and we've won several court cases significantly, and they're now switching to the home game of the Supreme Court of London. But it's to let you know that we are battling. We are lobbying political parties. We're working closely with representatives of the Irish government and telling them what we believe should be happening in your interests, with you and listening to you. So everything we do is framed around families and what they want in their lives, whether it's mental health rights, the access to services, whether it's reparations with a payment scheme or a pension scheme, and we need a scheme for the bereaved, and that's been in the media, and our team will be working hard on that. We are battling every day on your behalf, but it's such a humbling privilege to do it. And every time I come in and around these quilts, I never cease to be amazed about the memories, the love, the whole organisation. These are here forever, and these quilts we will eventually put into a museum. In the right place at the right time, and we'll be here, hopefully, long after we are all gone. Because that's the legacy too. The legacy of love and commitment and dedication that is etched into every single one of these squares. And I want to thank our funders who are here tonight from the ESS, and Andrew's here and Carol's here. I want to thank Andrew from the Victims Commission, and I want to thank the Irish government who are here. through, I'm going to hand back to Mary Kate to close off. But thank you most importantly to each and every single one of you. You are relatives for justice. We are privileged to be with you and journey with us. Thank you. Just to finish off, we just want to call Jane and Ella back onto the stage. Could you please call Jane and Ella? Maybe on your word, could. Jane, yes, Jane, our junior. But I also, sorry, it's very remiss of me here. I want to congratulate Mary Kate quickly.
Yes.
Mary Kate, and you all have been over the last few years with her as this is a process. Mary Kate, what an amazing piece of work, and thank you. Thank you. Just want to barge down.
Thank you all so much. As we come to a close this evening, I want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude. Thank you to the families, every single person here this evening. Your devotion and your love are at the heart of this quilt and every single thing that we do at Relatives for Justice. I want to thank Jane, our tutor, who facilitated the workshops and carefully brought this quilt together with such sensitivity and skill. I also just want to extend our thanks to Christopher and City Hall for the use of this wonderful venue and to Cafe Nosh for providing refreshments this evening. And just to finish off, as we add Quilt 11 to the collection, we do so knowing it is far more than a series of stitched panels. It is a profound act of remembrance. It is a tribute to love, a tribute to memory, and a tribute to lives that will always continue to matter. So, Gormila Mogul, to everyone this evening, thank you all